Doctor of Philosophy candidate. Welcome to second Bengkulu International Conference on Health, or BICON 2022, empowering interprofessional health collaborations in enhancing global health. My name is Adesis Kafilia, and I will be serving as your moderator today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, you will be hearing a presentation from Associate Professor Andrea Gilkinson from AUT University, Auckland University of Technology, of course, in this very timely subject. Well, today's international conference will provide you with the timely topics and outstanding speakers. Firstly, I would like to introduce you to our outstanding speaker today. As you can see in our large screen, Associate Professor Andrea. Should I call you Andrea? Can I? Okay, and in here, Andrea is currently working in Auckland University of Technology as a faculty academic advisor, as well as associate head postgraduate school of clinical sciences. And then she finished her PhD in 2011 in AUT University. And she also has numerous projects or research experiences, and the latest one is entitled The Experiences of New Zealand Women, Midwives and Student Midwives During COVID-19 Epidemic in New Zealand, led the design of the study, gained ethical approval, conducted and coordinated interviews, led data analysis, leading on publication writing. I want to say hi to Andrea, Kiora, Naumai, Harimai, or Kiora. In Maori means, in Bahasa Indonesia means hello and welcome to Bengkulu International Conference. Kate Peihakwe, how are you? Kotaku tu manako Kate Paikwe. I hope you are doing fine, Professor. Pahutakawa is about to bloom, May. I really miss Aotearoa. Well, for today, Andrea will present you her presentations about New Zealand continuity of midwifery care model, educating midwives for autonomous practice in rural communities. For Professor Andrea, screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very warm welcome, and congratulations on your Maori language, your Maori greetings. It was, you know, better than mine. So yeah, awesome. And I just like to, before I start, congratulate everybody on organizing this really important conference. It's a wonderful topic, and someone's got their microphone on. So look, I just think this is a really important conference, a really important topic, and I'm very honored to speak to you today. So here we are, here. So today I'm going to be talking about how to educate competent autonomous midwives for rural practice. And this is something that we have developed in New Zealand, because New Zealand is a very rural country. And I believe Indonesia also has aspects of rural communities, because people living very far apart, far away on many islands, far away from medical help. And it's a really important role for us as midwifery educators that we can educate midwives who can be really competent to provide midwifery care for mothers and babies in these sometimes very rural areas. So for that, they need to be highly competent and autonomous. So as I start, I bring you very, very warm greetings from Aotearoa, New Zealand. As the moderator said, the pohutakawa, this flower here, is about to be, my arrows, the picture at the very bottom of the flower, with the flowers, is the pohutakawa flower, and that is indeed, we call it the Christmas tree, New Zealand Christmas tree, and it is just coming into flower. So here I am, I'm beaming into you from Auckland, in the North Island of New Zealand. We're only 2 islands here, or 3 actually, 2 main islands in New Zealand. And, you know, I bring, even though we're far away, I bring you very, very warm greetings and connections from our country, New Zealand, to yours in Indonesia. And I've been very, very lucky to have visited Indonesia on a number of times. And I'm very honoured to be speaking to you virtually this time. And maybe next time I'll be able to actually meet you in person, which would be a great honour. So today I'm going to be talking about the New Zealand continuity of midwifery care model, how that works, and how for midwives to be able to work in continuity, they need to be very competent and they need to have the skills and the support to be autonomous. So autonomous meaning making their own decisions, deciding about what care they need to give to women. And then I'm going to talk about how we educate midwives to practice in rural communities, because it can be quite a challenge if you have your midwives, student midwives, coming to the urban areas and doing clinical placements, perhaps in a big hospital, but actually when they go home to their communities, the situation's very different. So we've developed a way of educating midwives for rural practice. So to start with, I'm going to talk about the continuity of care model that we are lucky enough to have in New Zealand. And when we say continuity of care, we actually mean continuity of carer. So that's consistent care from a midwife that provides care for a woman, her family, and her baby throughout her pregnancy, labour, birth, and after the birth in the postnatal period. So I mean, the images here, she's pregnant at 09:30, she's in labour at 11:45, and at 2:15 she's sitting breastfeeding her baby. So a very quick one. Normally this care for the pregnancy, birth, and afterwards would extend from the 9 months or 40 weeks of the pregnancy, the labour and birth, and then 4 to 6 weeks after the birth. So it's the best part of a year of a woman's life that in New Zealand, midwives care for her throughout that whole experience. So just referring you to, because the question is, does having continuity of carer make a difference to the outcomes for mothers and babies? And there's, you've probably heard of the Cochrane reviews, which are big meta-analyses of many papers, many studies which have been done across the world. And the findings of all of those studies are brought together to find like the really, most robust answers to our questions. So what the Jane Sandal et al. who have keep this Cochrane review up to date, have found that midwife-led continuity of care has many benefits for mothers and babies, and no harms were identified. One of the main benefits, of course, is satisfaction, a better experience from the mothers and the family's point of view. So, they still say that there are other things that we have to look into about the benefits of continuity of care. What are the effects on women who have more high-risk pregnancies, more complicated pregnancies, and those from diverse communities and in low and middle income settings. So just sort of acknowledging that in New Zealand we are blessed with good resources, and the government can afford to provide midwife for every woman and when she's having her baby in New Zealand. So in terms of the actual physical findings, where the Cochrane review that I've just spoken about has found that if you have a continuous midwife, one midwife who you know throughout your pregnancy, you're less likely to have an epidural, less likely to have forceps or ventouse birth, less likely to have a premature baby, 37 weeks. We just don't know why that is. And also less likely for your baby to die before and after 24 weeks. So there's still a lot we need to find out about. I mean, what is it? You know, why would you be less likely to have a premature baby if you know your midwife? And we can hypothesize that the reason for that is that the woman knows the midwife. The midwife has told her, these are the things to watch for. Call me if you've got any concerns. And so we think that what happens is that the woman, it feels comfortable to ring the midwife and tell her if she's got any concerns about, say, the baby's movements or going into early labor and so on. So that just having simply having that relationship means that the woman might call for help earlier than if she didn't know who to call or when to call and things. And that with a continuity of carer, so more likely to have a spontaneous vaginal birth, so a normal birth, no differences between groups for a cesarean birth. So far, the cesarean birth rate is the same whether you've got your own midwife throughout or whether you are or not. So, as I've said, in New Zealand, we are lucky. We have got a low maternal and infant mortality rate, and we're blessed with many resources and a government which makes maternity care free for women. So midwives may choose to work, and all of our students graduate. They can work in either place. They can either be self-employed as what we call a lead maternity carer or an LMC, who offers this continuity of care for women from a group of women, a caseload of women throughout their pregnancy. Or about approximately half of our graduates choose to go and be employed in a hospital and work rostered shifts. So it's about 50-50 in New Zealand, and we need those hospital midwives to be there as backups for when there's complications, to help out the lead maternity carer midwives when they bring women into the hospital. So we work together, but the main place of work can be determined by the midwife. So I'm going to be talking about the lead maternity carer midwives who provide continuity of care. And so in 1990, we had or prior to 1990, midwives couldn't take full responsibility for women during their pregnancy, labour and birth and postnatal period. They could work in a hospital, and the woman would go and see their doctor, their family doctor, or general practitioner during the pregnancy, and then come into the hospital, be looked after by the midwife who was on duty, and the doctor would come in and deliver the baby usually. So it took a change in the law to allow midwives to be able to take full responsibility themselves when things were going normally. So to be able to be autonomous and take full responsibility, the law needed to be changed so that the midwives could prescribe medicines for the mother and the baby. So they didn't have to refer to a doctor for prescriptions for, often very simple things like iron, or contraception after the baby, antibiotics if there was a breast infection. So now midwives can do that. Also, the other thing that prior to 1990, we couldn't do is order blood tests or scans or any other screening tests. But now midwives on their own account can order those blood tests, and then of course be able to interpret the blood tests and give the information back to the woman and be able to make appropriate decisions for her pregnancy or birth. And the other thing that we do often is making referrals to other specialists. So if a woman, for example, has signs of eclampsia, preeclampsia, then we would usually refer to an obstetrician or an obstetric physician. If a woman has bleeding in her pregnancy, then again, that's a complication that we would refer to an obstetrician. If there's any issues with the baby, babies who are, have infections, or their breathing isn't going well, then we refer to the pediatricians. So we still work together very closely. So we know that when we provide that continuity when things are going normally, but when there's complications, we may need to also involve others in that woman's care. And the other thing that happened since 1990 is that education of midwives changed. So before 1990, midwives, I was one of them. You had to be a nurse first and then do a shorter, a year or 18 months midwifery on top of nursing to be able to practice midwifery. Now, since 1990, we have a bachelor's degree, which is just midwifery. So our students, I'll talk more about what our programs are like, but so since that time, people who want to become midwives come and study midwifery right from the beginning, whether that be 3 or 4 years of education. So a lot of changes had to happen in the law to allow midwives to be autonomous. So the LMC model, or lead maternity carer model, is the cornerstone of the New Zealand maternity services. All the other services fit in around the model so that the woman experiences a seamless maternity service that meets her individual needs, whatever these might be. So every New Zealand resident has access to free maternity care, and which is fantastic. It's free. The government pays the midwife, and pregnant women are able to choose a community-based midwife as their lead maternity carer. So lead maternity carer midwives are based in the community. They're self-employed, so claim from the government for the services they offer, provide care from early pregnancy through till 6 weeks after the birth of the baby. As I've said, the scope of practice includes ordering tests, and we are contracted to the Ministry of Health, and that's the government. So all care is free for the woman. The other thing that we have is access to our local maternity facilities. So depending on where we live, we would have an agreement with the maternity facility where our local caseload of women want to birth at. And so that when she's in labour, we accompany her to that facility and along with the midwives who are already employed there, we can just continue to provide the care that's needed for the labour and birth. And in New Zealand, 95% of women have this service, so choose to have their own midwife. So I'm just going to show you a little bit. So how do women find out about who the midwives are and choose their midwives? So this is a screenshot of a website where it's called Find Your Midwife, and the midwives can put themselves up there. They can put some information about themselves. They can say when they're available, and women can contact them by phone or by email to see whether that midwife could be available. The other way that women find midwives is by word of mouth. They hear their sister, their friend, their whoever else, went to a certain midwife, and so by word of mouth, oh yes, I know her, recommend to go to that midwife. On the other place, of course, is through a family doctor, general practice, a primary healthcare facility where the woman might be going for a doctor. The midwives have relationships and may have a clinic within that facility. So that's another way that women find a midwife and choose their midwife, and they can maybe talk to a midwife and decide whether that's the right person for them, because everybody's different, and it's really important to have a good connection with the midwife. So midwives, many midwives practice in small groups so that they can share their equipment, their rental for the clinic, and provide backup to one another. And so these midwives work with midwife partners, mostly in small group practices and alongside midwives who are employed in those maternity units. So, for example, if the woman had chosen this midwife to be her midwife and the midwife said, yes, come and see me in my clinic in your pregnancy, that's where the woman would go. And so during the pregnancy, the antenatal care would be provided in the community within a clinic, a midwife's clinic, or in the woman's home, depending. And I would say in rural areas, may well be in the woman's home, because it's a long way to travel. So the midwife would potentially drive to where the woman lives. So during the pregnancy, of course, we provide the normal antenatal care, assessing the well-being of the mother and the baby, providing health education and advice, talking about the best place and to have for the birth, and thinking about the woman's individual requests and what her individual needs are. Ordering tests and scans as required, and making referrals as required during the pregnancy. Then when it comes the time for actually birthing the baby, the lead maternity carer midwife provides all the labour and birth care so long as everything's going along normally, referring if needed, or in the case of rural births, perhaps transferring to a bigger facility that would have more, say, for example, cesarean section or epidural anaesthesia available. So it all depends on where the woman is at the time as to what what needs to happen if there are complications. So women can choose to have their babies at home in a primary birthing unit, which would be like your midwives, your professional midwives birthing homes, or they in what we would call a secondary or tertiary level hospital. And in those secondary and tertiary level hospitals, that is where the obstetricians are available, paediatricians, where the anaesthetists are there, caesarean facilities, and so on. They're not available at home or in a primary unit. And then as far as the postnatal care goes, after birth, midwives will visit the mother and baby for 4 to 6 weeks after the birth. So usually a few times in the first week, making sure that everything's going okay, in particular the breastfeeding. And then usually weekly after that, once things are going well. And then at the end of the time, midwives refer the mother and that baby to child services. So we have nurses who their specialty is babies and children up to the age of 1 year. Okay, so how do we educate midwives for this incredible practice? They need to be competent right across the scope of midwifery, and they need to be able to make decisions, be autonomous. So this is an article which we wrote a few years ago now, but it's about the model of midwifery education. And if you want to know more, please have a look at it. So as I said, before 1992, you had to be a nurse before you became a midwife. And then after 1992, direct entry midwifery meant people without a nursing degree could be a midwife and do the Bachelor of Midwifery. And since 2011, the Bachelor of Midwifery is a 4-year degree, and there is a lot of practice hours. As you can see, 2,400 practice hours. So most of those are in the final year, but from the very first year, our students need to start practicing. They need to do they need to do like 100 antenatal checks, 100 baby checks, 40 hands-on births, 25 follow through, so continuity of care right across pregnancy, birth and postnatal. So as you can see, within the education system is a requirement for our graduates learn how to be midwives right across the pregnancy, birth and postnatal. So New Zealand has a very rural population, and the greener the bits are on the map, the less people live there. And the grey and darker areas tend to be more populated. So in the urban areas, there are more facilities available for complications and emergencies. In those rural areas, the very rural areas, there may be nothing for a very long way. So, it can be quite a challenge, and I know that you have similar challenges in Indonesia of being a long way away from medical help. And so there are small health centres in the rural areas, but as I've said, could be a long way from medical help, could be a 4-hour drive in the back of an ambulance over a bumpy road that might be closed if there's flooding, or a helicopter would need to go in to bring the woman out if that was possible. So, of course, midwives to work in that rural setting need really, really good assessment skills. We need to anticipate if things are not progressing as we expect and can transfer early if it's going to be needed. The other thing that midwives need is really good support by phone or when they arrive with the situation, with the woman, they need really good support from the maternity facilities once they get there. And of course, excellent emergency skills. So able to do life-saving treatment for mothers and babies if it's needed. So they need to be well resourced and have the equipment to be able to do those, perform those life-saving things in the absence of any medical help. So what is needed to educate midwives for autonomous rural practice? And as a study by Corina Adnani, who's one of my PhD graduates, what she found is that what midwives need is practice, 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 and hands-on practice, not observation. They need to have their clinical practice supervised by midwives who are going to teach them midwifery. They need to be able to provide that continuity of care, so follow women through the pregnancy, birth, and postnatal period. And you could organise this within your midwifery program, that for the students to follow through, find women, approach women who are pregnant and say, can I come along with you to your visits, to your birth and postnatally? And there they'll learn what it's like, what the woman's experience is like. Working alongside professional midwives, and particularly if those midwives who are working in the villages, supervised by midwives. So as you can see, this is what we have found in New Zealand is needed, and also Corina's research in Indonesia echoed exactly the same thing. So the other model of education which we use at AUT and other midwifery schools in New Zealand also use is that we would have what we would call satellite students. So the midwifery school is at AUT in Auckland, New Zealand, but we have a satellite group down in Taranaki, which is a 6-hour drive. It's quite a long way. Previously, our midwifery students had to go and live in Auckland or travel to Auckland for big chunks of theory. Since about 2005, we have had the satellite students who live in the Northland region and the Taranaki region, who can stay at home, living in their home area. They can access all our lectures online. We beam out, thank goodness for Zoom, from Auckland out to the satellites. They have a clinical educator employed by AUT who lives in the area and supports all the students, arranges all their clinical teaching and their practice placements in the local area. So the benefits of doing it this way are that once they graduate, they stay working in their own community. They don't have to leave their family to study. And crucially, they can understand their own local community when they graduate and practice as midwives. And so bringing it all together, with the ability to provide continuity of care, to support midwives out in the rural areas, in the communities, in their villages, then, we will create midwives who have the skills and the knowledge for working autonomously in rural communities. And this is urgent, because as we know, the women in the faraway communities can be very disadvantaged, and we're having higher infant and maternal mortality as a result. So I think it's urgent internationally that we train midwives who can go out into those communities, serving those communities, and provide that much needed care that they need. So finally, I will just say, I hope, I'm coming to Bali in June next year. and really looking forward to it, being in Indonesia, and hopefully we'll be able to meet up with some of you in Bali as well. So please do come and say hi to me if you spot me there. And we're going to have questions later on, but that's it for now. So I will stop my sharing. Cool. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and I believe there'll be questions later.
Thank you so much, Professor Andrea.